The greatest manipulator in Wall Street history just taught Jesse Livermore why manipulation doesn't work. James R. Keene marketed 750,000 shares of U.S. Steel in weeks. The stock hit $55, then crashed to $8.78. But here's what separated Livermore from every amateur watching that campaign. He learned that manipulation without sound trading principles is just expensive theater. The old tricks, dead, wash sales, corners, matched orders obsolete as cavalry charges. In the next 13 minutes, you'll discover how to spot the difference between artificial pumps and genuine market leadership. This single distinction separates traders who get trapped from those who ride the real moves. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever been burned by what you thought was manipulation? Spring of 1901, Wall Street is witnessing something unprecedented. J.P. Morgan has just created U.S. Steel, the first billion-dollar corporation in history. Its capitalization exceeds the entire debt of the United States. And nobody knows how to sell it to the public. Morgan doesn't call Jesse Livermore. He doesn't call the Whitney Ryan clique. He calls one man, James R. Keene, the most brilliant manipulator Wall Street has ever seen. Within weeks, Keene markets over 750,000 shares to an eager public, while steel magnates dump hundreds of thousands more. The stock that Keene pushed to $55 would later crash to $8.78. But in that moment, he accomplished what seemed impossible. Livermore watched this campaign with fascination. He studied every move and he realized something profound. Here's what most traders believe: manipulation is about tricks. Wash sales to create fake volume. Matched orders to paint the tape. Corners to squeeze the shorts. Lock up the money supply and rig the game. It's like a magic show, right? Pull off the right trick at the right time and you control the stock. Think about it. You see unusual volume. You see the stock grinding higher on no news. You think someone's manipulating this. I should jump in, or worse, this is fake strength. I should short it. You're trying to guess the trick instead of reading the reality. But here's what amateurs don't understand. All those old tricks are obsolete. Stock exchange rules changed. Taxes made fictitious transactions expensive. The tools of manipulation from the 1860s are as useful today as archery on a modern battlefield. Daniel Drew's tactics, Jacob Little's corners? Studying them is like a West Point cadet learning medieval siege warfare to understand ballistics. Livermore learned something critical from watching Keene. Manipulation is the art of advertising through the medium of the tape. The tape should tell the story the manipulator wishes its readers to see. The truer the story, the more convincing it is bound to be. Wait, the truer the story? Keene wasn't just making stocks look strong, he was making them be strong. His manipulation was based on sound trading principles. He was a consummate trader first, manipulator second. This is the difference between artificial price action and genuine market leadership. And understanding this distinction will transform how you read the tape. Before you can spot manipulation, you must understand what no longer works. Livermore was emphatic about this. Most of the tricks, devices, and expedients of bygone days are obsolete and futile, or illegal and impracticable. Think of it like modern warfare. You don't study cavalry charges to understand tank battalions. You don't learn archery to master ballistics. The weapons changed. But strategy? Strategy remains strategy on the New York Stock Exchange as on the battlefield. The human element, the psychology, the fear and hope, that never changes. Here's where intermediate traders get trapped. They learn about historical manipulation tactics and start seeing them everywhere. You read about wash sales, so every spike in volume looks suspicious. You hear about matched orders, so you think every coordinated move is rigging. A stock jumps 3 points on heavy volume. You think that's manipulation, they're washing it up. So you fade the move or sit on the sidelines. But what if it's genuine institutional buying? What if it's real demand? You're fighting ghosts from 70 years ago while missing the actual battle happening right now. Livermore watched traders do this constantly. They were so busy looking for the laundry, so convinced the brokers were running bucket shop drives, that they missed legitimate market movements. They confused obsolete tactics with timeless strategy. The professional studies what actually matters, human psychology. Livermore declared it plainly: the study of the psychology of speculators is as valuable as it ever was. Weapons change, but strategy remains strategy. What does this mean practically? Stop trying to identify specific tricks. Start reading what the tape reveals about human behavior. Is there real conviction behind the buying? Are professionals accumulating or distributing? Is this price action driven by fear, hope, or genuine value assessment? Thomas Woodlock, whom Livermore respected deeply, summed it up: the principles of successful stock speculation are based on the supposition that people will continue in the future to make the mistakes that they have made in the past, not the tactics. The principles, the psychology, the strategy. Consider what happened when manipulation tactics shifted from the 1860s to the 1900s. In the old days, corners were the ultimate weapon. Commodore Vanderbilt cornered Harlem Railroad twice and made millions. Henry Keene squeezed Addison Jerome out of everything he owned in the old Southern corner. These were the era's nuclear weapons. But by Livermore's time, corners had become financial suicide. The Stutz corner was expensive to everybody concerned, both in money and prestige. The Northern Pacific corner of 1901 wasn't even deliberate manipulation, it was competitive buying gone wrong. Why stock exchange rules evolved, margin requirements changed. The market grew too large for corners to work efficiently, the weapon became obsolete. Yet traders kept trying to use them, kept looking for them. They were studying cavalry tactics in the age of machine guns. Meanwhile, operators like Keene had evolved to something entirely different, making stocks genuinely strong rather than artificially squeezed. That's adaptation, that's survival. That's why he succeeded where others failed. But understanding that old tactics are dead means nothing if you can't recognize what replaced them. Because modern manipulation exists, it just looks completely different than you think. Here is Livermore's revelation about Keene's genius. A manipulator today has not only to make a stock look strong, but also to make it be strong. Manipulation, therefore, must be based on sound trading principles. This is the paradigm shift. Manipulation isn't about deception anymore, it's about leadership. Think of it like a military campaign. A general doesn't just make his army appear formidable. He makes it actually formidable through training, positioning, supply lines, and morale. The appearance follows the reality, not the other way around. Intermediate traders make a dangerous assumption. If manipulation exists, the stock must be weak underneath. They see aggressive buying and think, this is artificial. When the manipulator stops, it'll collapse. I should short this or stay away. So you watch a stock climb steadily on increasing volume. Every dip gets bought, every breakout holds. But you're convinced it's manipulation, so you wait for the collapse. You might even short it, thinking you're clever for seeing through the game. Then the stock goes up another 20 points, then another 30. You're bewildered. You think, how long can they keep this going? Here's the truth, it's not being kept going. It's going because it's genuinely strong. You mistook leadership for deception. You confused market making for market faking. The professional asks different questions, not, is this manipulated? But rather, is the buying creating real strength or just appearance? How do you tell? Livermore learned this from Keene's campaigns. Real strength shows itself in how the stock handles adversity. Does it hold gains when selling pressure comes? Does it absorb it or collapse? Are other quality stocks in the sector moving similarly, or is this stock isolated? Keene would mark up a stock by actually building positions at lower levels, creating genuine support. He would leave the market alone for days just to see how it would take care of itself. This tested whether the strength was real. If the stock held without his buying, it was genuinely strong. If it faltered immediately, more work was needed. The manipulation created reality, not illusion. The Amalgamated Copper campaign proves this perfectly. H. Rogers and William Rockefeller, two of America's greatest capitalists with unlimited resources, tried to sell their amalgamated stock. They failed. They had the prestige, the capital, the connections. But they couldn't create real market strength, just artificial attempts. They brought in Keene. He sold 220,000 shares at around par. But here's what matters. After Keene finished selling the insiders line, the public kept buying. The stock went 10 points higher. The insiders got so bullish on the stock they just sold that Rogers actually advised Keene to buy more at $130. Why did this happen? Because Keene didn't just dump stock. He created genuine demand. He built real market strength through careful accumulation, strategic timing, and letting the stock prove itself. When he finally distributed, buyers appeared because the strength was authentic. The manipulation had made the stock genuinely desirable, not just temporarily inflated. That's the difference. So you can recognize genuine strength versus artificial pumping. But there's a third element, perhaps the most important: understanding why even brilliant manipulation has a shelf life. Livermore revealed a critical limitation. Keene's success with U.S. Steel wasn't just about skill. General conditions favored him, not only actual business, but sentiment and his unlimited financial backing made possible his success. What we had was not merely a big bull market, but a boom. This is crucial. Manipulation, even genius manipulation, requires a cooperating market. It's like a military campaign requiring favorable terrain. You can't march an army through a mountain range in winter, no matter how brilliant your strategy. The market's primary trend is more powerful than any individual operator. Here's the trap. Traders see a heavily promoted stock in a bear market and think, if it's being manipulated by smart money, it must be a good trade. They wouldn't manipulate unless they knew something wrong. Manipulation against the primary trend is financial suicide. You're watching a stock get pumped during a market crash. The manipulator is buying, promoting, trying everything. You jump in, thinking the manipulation will overcome the bear market. It can't. Livermore saw this repeatedly. Stocks being heavily manipulated in unfavorable conditions would show temporary strength, then collapse harder than everything else. The manipulator becomes trapped. His artificial buying created resistance levels that became distribution zones. He fought the tide and drowned. And you drowned with him because you believed manipulation trumped market direction. The professional understands sequence. First, identify the primary trend. Second, look for leadership within that trend. Third, assess whether the leadership is genuine or artificial. Never reverse this order. Keene succeeded with U.S. Steel because he was working with the market's momentum, not against it. He had a bull market, a boom psychology, public enthusiasm for new issues. His manipulation amplified existing forces. He was sailing with the wind, just adjusting the sails for maximum speed. When conditions changed, even Keene couldn't save Steel. The stock he'd marked to $55 crashed to $8.78. The boom ended, the trend reversed, and no amount of manipulative skill could overcome that. The market is supreme. Operators are merely opportunists. Livermore's own experience proves this principle. In his early days, he would sometimes try to force a stock to move when conditions weren't right. He'd have solid reasoning, good position, even some backing. But if the market didn't cooperate, he failed. He learned this lesson permanently during the 1907 panic. Stocks he knew were fundamentally strong collapsed anyway. Why? Because the primary trend was panic. Fear overwhelmed everything else. Even proven leaders got destroyed. Contrast this with Keene's timing on his major campaigns. U.S. Steel in 1901, boom times, Amalgamated Copper, bull market, sugar, favorable conditions. He never fought the market's primary direction, he rode it skillfully. This is why Livermore emphasized that you must first define what constitutes a real market movement, then identify the trend, and only then look for individual opportunities. Sequence matters. Try to manipulate a stock against the market tide, and you're attempting to sail north when the wind blows south. It's not brave, it's suicidal. Understanding these three principles separates you from 90% of traders. But knowledge means nothing without application. Let's synthesize this into a practical framework you can use immediately. Let's bring Livermore's wisdom together into one unified approach for reading manipulation versus genuine market leadership. This framework is progressive, top-down, and disciplined. It begins with obsolete versus timeless. Stop looking for wash sales, corners, or matched orders. These are cavalry tactics in the age of mechanized warfare. Instead, study human psychology, fear, hope, and the patterns of mistakes traders make repeatedly. This never changes. It moves to appearance versus reality. When you see strong price action, ask not whether it's manipulated, but whether the manipulation is creating genuine strength. Does the stock hold gains? Does it absorb selling pressure? Does it continue when the obvious buying stops? Keene made stocks be strong, amateurs just paint charts. It demands trend alignment. Even brilliant manipulation requires a cooperating market. Identify the primary trend first, always. Manipulation that works with the trend looks like market leadership. Manipulation against the trend looks like leadership briefly, then becomes catastrophic failure. Never confuse the two. And finally, integration. These aren't separate techniques. They're a mental discipline. You read the tape not for tricks, but for truth. You assess strength not by price movement alone, but by how that movement reflects underlying forces. You recognize that manipulation, when done correctly, is indistinguishable from genuine demand, and because it creates genuine demand. This is not pattern recognition. It's systematic reality assessment. Here's what this really means. The 90% who fail see a stock climbing and immediately ask, is this manipulation? They're driven by suspicion and conspiracy thinking. They see aggressive buying and assume deception. They miss every major move because they're fighting phantoms. The 10% who succeed see the same stock and ask, is this genuine strength being created or temporary illusion? They have cultivated discernment. They assess whether the price action creates its own momentum or requires constant artificial support. They recognize that the best manipulation is invisible because it makes the stock authentically attractive. This system transforms market reading from guessing games into strategic assessment. It is a methodology that protects you from both getting run over by genuine leaders and getting trapped in artificial pumps. Now, let me be clear, this is not easy. Livermore himself said that recognizing the difference between leadership and manipulation requires experience, discipline, and constant study. This framework will not make you rich overnight. What it will do is prevent you from making the fatal errors that destroy most traders, fighting real strength because you think it's fake, or chasing artificial strength because you think it's real. But only if you have the discipline to assess market conditions first, price action second, and your own biases never. Most won't, will you? So here's my challenge to you. Take one stock you're watching right now. Stop asking if it's manipulated. Instead, run through this framework. What's the primary trend? Is the price action creating genuine support levels that hold, or are they immediately violated when obvious buying stops? Is the sector moving similarly, or is this stock isolated? Answer these questions honestly, and you'll know whether you're looking at leadership or illusion. Livermore spent decades learning to read the tape this way. Keene spent a lifetime mastering the art. You just got their combined wisdom in 13 minutes. The question is, will you apply it? If you're serious about understanding Livermore's complete approach to reading markets, you need to read Reminiscences of a Stock Operator by Edwin Lefevre. This isn't just history. It's a masterclass in market psychology that remains as relevant today as in 1923. Link in the description. And for those who want to understand how Livermore identified real trends versus false moves, watch this video next. If this changed how you think about manipulation and market leadership, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into legendary trading wisdom. and drop a comment. Have you ever mistaken genuine strength for manipulation or vice versa? What happened? I read every comment. Remember, this video is for educational purposes only. This is not investment advice. Livermore and Keene's strategies require study, practice, and discipline. The market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. Always do your own research and never risk more than you can afford to lose.